Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marie, and I am your astrologer. It is Monday morning, June 21st. Happy Solstice. Nice to see everybody. See some people up early this morning. You guys are kind of like getting into the flow of this with me, or maybe you're already awake, depending on where you are in the world. I'm on East Coast time. I'm on West Coast time. I'm in Las Vegas, so it's a little bit earlier here, but it's easier for me to get these out first thing Monday morning, and it also helps you guys because you guys get some insight into the week ahead. So hello, it's nice to see you. Hey Asha, Chelsea, good morning. Let some people show up, give them a couple minutes to get here. How's everybody doing? What did you guys do? Anything fun for the solstice? People are doing stuff last night, they're doing stuff today. I'm probably gonna do my stuff today. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from these changes of these energies now that we are in Cancer season. So I have a lot of notes to get through today. I'm like looking at my notes and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope people don't fall asleep. Hello from Argentina. Hi, Melanie. Yeah, so what we're going to focus on talking about today mostly is going to be the impending full moon in Capricorn that's coming pretty soon. And that's going to be hitting at around 3 degrees of Capricorn. That'll be on June 24th. So those of you guys who are new to my channel, welcome. Those of you guys who are back, welcome back. You guys get the flow for this. We talk a little bit about what's going to happen astrologically for the next month. Anytime we have a new moon or a full moon, I put a little bit more emphasis on that and talk about what's happening with that, what to expect, and we pull some cards and take a look at what we're gonna see happening for each of the 12 signs. And if you stay until the end, I will give you insight as to how it will affect your chart. As always, you want to listen to your sun, moon, and rising. My predictions are most accurate if you listen to your rising sign and then your sun sign. The rising is always what physically manifests. The sun is more, you know, what helps you on a personal level and like what is really going to help you for your own individual growth and direction. Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, so now people are kind of starting to show up. We'll get into it. Let me grab my Sabian symbol book too, because I want to make sure that I stay on top of that. It's really helpful to talk to you guys about the degree and what to expect for the degree. So those of you guys who are into Sabian symbols, we're going to be really looking at the 4 degrees of Capricorn. Yes, I know the full moon is at 3 degrees. However, when you work with the Sabian symbols, you want to round up. So if it's 3 degrees in so many minutes, then you want to read the next one up. So you can, if you have that book, you can reference that. You can read along. It'll be story time. Full moon stuff. Preparing for an earthquake drill in Mexico City. Wow. Solstice from Canada. Hi, Holly. Yeah, Cancer season, holy feels. So basically, just kind of kicking the week off, we could talk a little bit about what's going on today. So today is summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. So basically we're welcoming the season of Cancer. It is officially summertime here. The sun is at the highest point in our skies. Interesting that that coincided with Father's Day, actually. You know, the move of the sun into Cancer happened yesterday. So, you know, I think of like the sun and Father's Day and just like that whole shift and coming into that energy and really bringing the family unit together. Definitely on social media, saw a lot of like really cute dad posts. Saw a lot of like my teachers or my mentors that are posting photos with their dads. Lots of like people that I just follow also that are just entertainment and just other personalities online. It's fun to kind of see everybody's dad. So I don't know if you guys have noticed just the abundance of sharing of father stuff yesterday, but it seemed a little bit more prominent than it has in most years. Probably makes sense considering, you know, we're coming out of a year of just spending a lot of time at home. So I bet a lot of kids and a lot of partners, wives, parents, daughters, sons have a lot more better appreciation for their fathers after spending a lot more time at home. Thank you very much, Melanie. I appreciate that. But you know, what is the solstice? Solstice is that turning point, right? Like we've been in a lot of change recently this last month up until Cancer season begun. And that's because we have had a ton of planets in mutable signs. We had an eclipse in Sag. We had an eclipse in Gemini. We're still in the midst of a Mercury retrograde in Gemini. So it's changeable, right? It's mutable. So Gemini really ushered in that change. And now that we're in Cancer season, there's more of a focus on our emotions, our feelings. How do we feel now that things have changed? How are we putting more of an emphasis on our home, our domestic life, taking care of our mental, emotional health? What are we protecting? So it's kind of fun, especially because this end of June bleeds into July, and then we have like all of the 4th of July stuff here in the States, and we have the summertime and everybody's like cooking out and spending time having family meals and parties at home. So it's like very Cancerian when you think about it. But I just want you guys to be mindful. Number one, the energy shift is very, very, very potent. So this is an amazing time for like setting new intentions. It's an amazing time for shifting energy. When we're working with Cancer season, Cancer is a cardinal energy, meaning it's motivated. It wants to get something started. And Cancer doesn't always go direct. It's kind of more, okay, check in with our feelings and then we react, or check in with our feelings and then we take action. So it's a wonderful time on an emotional level to be like really checking in with yourself and setting new emotional, bars, and basically like focusing on how we want to feel and how we're becoming more assertive in protecting ourselves and protecting our domestic or our personal zone. Great time for going swimming, baths, working with water. A lot of people also like to work with water and fire during the solstice. It's really a matter of personal choice. But if you do take time today, take time to sit down, reflect, it's just a very potent energy to get things started. We are still in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. So yes, it's great to set intentions now, but I feel like there are things that are still unfolding into the beginning of July, and I'll talk to you guys about why and how that's going to be happening. But all you need to know right now is that people are going to be just a lot more in their feels than usual, especially leading up to this full moon that we're going to have in Capricorn. Oh baby, feelings. So retrograde alert also. Jupiter is now retrograde in Pisces. I don't know if you guys checked out my Jupiter in Pisces video. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to my channel. You can do so below. But if you guys have time and if you haven't seen that, go watch my Jupiter in Pisces video. I talk all about the retrogrades, when Jupiter goes in and out of Pisces, because it will be retrograding back into Aquarius before it fully moves into Pisces later this year. And then it really is just in the later degrees pretty much all of next year. I think it'll actually dip into Aries a little bit too. But while Jupiter is going retrograde, it's a time to like reevaluate our faith, our growth, our belief systems. You know, I talked a little bit about how we got like a little piece of the puzzle of what Jupiter will bring us in Pisces in this next year. So, now that it's getting ready to retrograde back into Aquarius, it's not like we don't have as much growth and expansion. I don't really believe that. I feel like it's just more now we're starting to apply a lot of the spiritual growth or a lot of our faith or our beliefs or even our emotions on an internal level. It's a lot of reflecting. And the retrograde actually started yesterday on June 20th, and it's going to continue to be retrograde until October 17th before it goes direct, and then it comes back into Pisces. Neptune also goes retrograde, and that's going to be happening on the 25th of this month, and it will be retrograde until the 1st of December of 2021. You know, kind of like a Saturn retrograde or any outer planet retrograde, we don't feel the effects of it as much. We feel it, we're working with it. I actually don't mind Neptune retrograde. I feel like it can be a little bit easier because we're actually cutting through the fog and we can kind of make sense of some things that have been confusing or cloudy or things that just don't sit right with us emotionally. I'm going to keep saying like, super holy feels, guys. Like there's a lot of planets in water, especially looking at all of the aspects that are building also with the Venus-Pluto opposition that's also coming. So then on the 23rd of this month, we are going to see that, let me move ahead here. There we go. This just before the full moon on the 23rd, Venus in Cancer comes into an opposition with Pluto in Capricorn. On a more kind of like global level, like how is this going to affect the world, we start really looking at aspects of power and where we may see abuses of power, or where we may see power being taken away, or a challenge of power in some sense. Venus is like, and when I see this, it makes me think of the phrase like all is fair in love and war, because Pluto definitely is kind of that, similar to Mars, probably more intense than Mars. Pluto is that deep transformative power struggle, the power plays, the death, the rebirth, sometimes the ruthlessness. And in Capricorn, it's extremely cold. So we may see some big things shape up over the next couple of days pertaining to, politics and federal spending, things that are going on with Fed meetings, things that are going on with the markets. I think we're also just going to see that there can be some big thing in the news about something that's going on with some of the big banks or the finances. Laws and regulations and things that are also perhaps being passed or being spoken about in terms of our budget. Venus can also rule women, right? So women, beauty, relationships, cosmetics. And Venus in Cancer is very sweet. It's very kind. It's very nurturing. It's kind of like cuddling up and having like a nap on the couch, or having like fresh baked cookies. So there can be some things that come up over the next week that look sweet, like they look good, they look inviting, they look safe, they look secure, but in reality they may not be. With that opposition to Pluto. So I have seen, just studying in a lot of charts, I've seen like a lot of aspects where there can be sting operations or crackdowns. I've seen situations where there's been, definitely having studied charts of people who were kidnapped or who went missing or unfortunately were attacked. Not so much sexual attack, but just attacked, especially domestic attacks. I've seen that a lot in Venus-Pluto oppositions. What's interesting also is that Venus in Cancer is trining Neptune. So we've got like this kind of like Neptunian, alluring, beautiful, kind of thing that's going on, where it's like there can be that tall, dark, handsome stranger that you meet, but it may not necessarily be what it seems. So kind of just like be aware of your surroundings, especially for women. Be aware of just when you're out and about, be mindful also, Neptune being drinks and liquids. We could see something that could come up that deals with contaminated water. We could see that there is more of a likelihood of people getting poisoned, or people ingesting drugs unintentionally. So it's just, if you're out, if you're drinking, if you're doing things, keep an eye on your drink. Be mindful of where you are and who's around you. Be careful around water also. Venus in opposition to Pluto can definitely be some extreme situations revolving around water with the trine to Neptune, or drinking out at the beach or drinking on a boat. Just be careful. But on a personal level, the Venus opposed Pluto is kind of like that, going through a challenging breakup and like trying to cut somebody off, and then that person shows up at your house, right? Or like they show up at your work. There can also be really extreme tensions and power plays and dynamic between our commitment on an emotional level to ourselves, our own security, our own protectiveness, and also what is expected of us out in the world. So, there can be back and forth in power struggles. And this is also going to be highlighted because of the full moon, where there's something going on domestically and you need to, take care of that, whether it's like the dog that needs to be taken care of and needs to go to the vet, and then you have to call your boss that you can't come into work today because you're dealing with that, or your kids that are sick and you're going to be late to a meeting, and that kind of tension in the back and the forth. And Pluto-Venus oppositions, this is going to be easier to deal with than the Mars opposition that we had recently. This is kind of like the second act, right? Now it's more, well, how do we grow and how do we evolve without feeling the need to manipulate and control other people? So we want to lean more into the Venus trine Neptune, which is like, being compassionate, understanding, giving. Like there can be a lot of like room for transformation and transmutation of actual like pain, right? And healing from past events. So it's my interpretation of that. Mercury turns direct on the 22nd. So one more day, guys, and we're done with the Mercury retrograde. This one has been a doozy. I do feel like it's been a lot more active and wild in the in the shadow period, actually, like the whole week to 10 days leading up to the Mercury retrograde that started this month, I feel like it was just super, super, super active. Lots of weird glitches with technology, with electronics, with wires, with internets, with communication breakdowns. So I'm just giving you this heads up and this warning. Just because Mercury retrograde ends tomorrow, it doesn't actually really end. We're in the shadow period, clear all the way until about, let's say like the 9th, maybe the 10th of July. So when a planet turns direct, especially a planet that's closer to Earth, like Mercury, like things can start buzzing. Like I think of like buzzing and humming and like all of a sudden like all systems go, and there can be some huge breakthrough in contracts, negotiations, communications, phone calls, if you've been waiting to hear back from people. I'm guessing that a lot of the follow-up and things that are getting cleared out are actually going to be taking place pretty much tomorrow through the beginning of July. If you've been waiting on signing a contract or doing anything like that, you know, in theory, yes, you could start moving forward with that in the next couple of days. However, I kind of have some different perspective on that. Some dates to just kind of remember is that on July 6th and 7th, when Mercury squares Neptune for the third and final time, that will be the finally coming out of the confusion, coming out of the miscommunication, coming out of the false information, the false data, the false news, whatever it is that you've been dealing with, the lies, manipulation. It's like the truth can come out after that period of time. So you want to look back on the last couple of times that Mercury squared Neptune over the last month and see where you were trying to cut through some kind of a fog, and then it will clear out. These days, and I'll talk about it in the weeks ahead as we get to the beginning of July, these are days that you don't want to sign contracts. So if you can avoid any type of commitments or signatures or signing of leases or anything like that, I wouldn't be doing it at the beginning of July. I would actually say you probably want to do it at the end of this month, and you want to avoid the beginning of July, especially those of you guys who are like, I'm moving and I'm going to sign a new lease, or I'm buying a car or whatever. Like, do it at the end of July if you have to, the end of June if you have to. Ideally, you're waiting until, you know, after the 10th of July. And then also about the 9th or the 10th of July, we begin to move out of the Mercury shadow right around the new moon in Cancer. So I think that that's just, cosmically speaking, a little bit friendlier for this energy, and it's going to be easier for us to be able to kind of like set really clear goals and intentions. And then at this same time, Mars and Venus in Leo are really active in their squares to both Saturn and Aquarius and Uranus and Taurus. And because those squares are going to be alive and well, adjustment will be needed. So I'm kind of looking at this like, okay, there's going to be some kind of clash going on in relationships or in values or in financial situations. So it doesn't really make sense to try to push through and agree to things now, because you're still going to have to adjust and you're going to have to make changes. So trust me on this, just wait. Neptune is retrograde in your natal chart. What does this mean for this retrograde? It depends on the aspects that are being made to your Neptune. I really want to wait until after the shadow period to quit my job, but I couldn't wait anymore, understandably, but there's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with in closing of that chapter during the shadow. If Neptune's retrograde on your IC, you want to look at the sign that it's in and the aspects that it's making. And then this leads us to really kind of the bulk of my conversation today, and that is the full moon in Capricorn on June 24th. This is an interesting full moon, in my opinion. There's a lot working here. You know, yeah, we've got the squares, whatever. I sound like a broken record. I've been talking about the Saturn-Uranus squares. I promise it's only going to be super active this month and like until like mid-August, and then we won't talk about it until Christmas time. But when we are seeing a full moon in Capricorn, we have to look at Saturn. That's what we have to look at because it's the ruler of that particular lunation. So let's break it down. What is a full moon? It is an illumination of both the sun and the moon coming into polarity and highlighting these two axes, right? So depending on where the full moon lands in your chart, we'll talk about that. It always shows some kind of separation or conclusion or highlighting a polarity. And the zodiac is really, and I love talking to people about this, yes, we have 12 zodiac signs, but in reality, we really have 6. we have 6 different archetypes that each have 2 separate polarities that are complementary to each other. You can't have Aries without Libra, right? You can't have Scorpio without Taurus. So when we look at Capricorn, and a Capricorn full moon, because currently right now the earth is in Capricorn. The sun may be in Cancer, but the earth is in Capricorn. So we will feel in a very physical sense some of these Capricorn things that are coming about, but we're highlighting with the sun is where we are emotionally. So it's kind of a contradiction, right? Because we have the sun and the moon, and people can kind of get mixed up in this. All you need to know about is the fact that the sun is where the action is currently. So the sun in Cancer, actively working on our emotions, domestic stuff, how we feel, being aware of how we feel. The moon comes into Capricorn where it's not so happy. And basically it's going to highlight the fact that we need to emotionally do some kind of work, right? Moon and Capricorn. Emotional labor. Those of you guys who have a Capricorn moon, you know what I'm talking about. I love all those Capricorn moons that are always talking about like being dead inside and stuff, because in reality, I mean, I know so many Capricorn moons. That's really not the case. There's just more kind of like a Saturnian kind of like, you know, like realist view on the world and on emotions. So certainly this moon can be very, very contrast to what Cancer season is about, especially with all this like water that's going on right now. So we look to Saturn during the time of this moon, and we see the aspects that Saturn is currently making. So the notes that I have here is, you know, Saturn, it's coming into an opposition with Mars that won't really perfect still until, you know, later in the month and even going into the beginning of July. So when we see, you know, Saturn in opposition to Mars, Saturn is kind of like that lasso, right? That's like thrown into the mix and then it's pulled back. So it wants to restrict, it wants to limit, it wants to pull back. Saturn in Aquarius is kind of this this feeling of being isolated in groups or being separated. On one hand, it's been insane for just the amount of shifts that's been going on in the internet and the way that we connect with people on like digital interfaces and Zooms and Google calls and FaceTime chats. But it's also shown us where we're super limited in our ability to like actually come together. And you know, I keep thinking back about people are like, we're all in this together. Some way, somehow, through what's gone on with the pandemic over this last year, yes, we've had a lot of separation, but there's also been a lot of coming together, and like a lot of people have really met and found their tribe online. A lot of people have taken to, you know, chat rooms and groups and Facebook groups and social media or Zoom calls or whatever, and there's been a lot of unity in the midst of this. So Saturn coming into an opposition with Mars in Leo, watch out, that's some hot stuff. That's big ego energy. I'm trying to keep it PG this morning. It's big ego energy. So you see like this fireball of Mars and Leo that just wants to move forward and be boastful with its pride and its creativity and its independence. And it's just got this really kind of like charismatic, you know, and yet dominating energy that really demands the spotlight. Saturn's going to be like, no. So there's going to be a lot of big egos that are flaring up pretty much from this full moon for the next month as we see these squares between planets in Leo, T-square with Saturn and also Uranus. And I'll talk about that, you know, each week, and we can kind of get into it more. But secondly, we also see that the T-square is involving Uranus, which Uranus and Taurus is about how we're transforming our values, and it definitely deals a lot with like stability and how we might be feeling a little unstable. And then the Mars aspect is how we react to that instability, and Saturn is the one who's calling the shots. So if we were to break this down, it's going to be things like, you know, challenges in friendships, groups not necessarily getting along, certain, you know, political figures that are having big clashes with younger people. You know, Saturn square Uranus is kind of like, you know, the older generation versus the younger generation. And we're definitely seeing this play out in a very, very big way with the Pluto in Leo people, Pluto in Leo, and how they're adapting to those of us who have Pluto in Scorpio, those of us who have Saturn in Aquarius. So you're really looking at these people who were born with Pluto in Scorpio in the 80s going into the 90s, really coming into their own And then these Saturn in Aquarius people who were born, I'm talking about the younger generations that were born in the early 90s, and how they're all kind of teaming up. And a lot of boomers are kind of feeling attacked right now and kind of feeling like it's harder for them to adapt. And it's going to play out very much politically, but I also think it's going to play out in terms of finances. Like I can't stop looking at all of these changes that are going on with trading in the markets and cryptocurrency, and like just having watched a lot more videos recently, because my partner does like a lot of stuff about predictions with cryptocurrency and also just what's going on in the market. And it's just always on. So I'm just like seeing all these young kids come on, and they're talking about how, you know, they want to take their power back, and that they're trying to educate younger people about trading, about getting involved in the markets. The fact that a lot of it is very crooked, that Wall Street has been that way for some time, that they're manipulating numbers, that there's dark trades and all kinds of shit that's going on that is just not fair. It's not a fair kind of like an even playing field. So when you think about it, we're going to see this in relationships, we're going to see this in friendships, we're going to see this with older versus younger generations, and how we are adapting and whether or not we're going to get along. So that there's going to be a lot of ego flare-ups. It's unavoidable, and it's going to play out all summer long. It's going to create a lot of drama, to be honest with you guys. So secondly, you know, this will get highlighted once Venus moves into Leo. I'll give you guys those dates. But that'll be probably the strongest now due to Mars. And then we're going to see it highlighted again the 1st through the 8th of August when the Sun and Mercury move into Leo. And it will also make squares and oppositions to Saturn and Uranus. So that's in the future. So the degree is 3 degrees of Capricorn. The full moon is going to be on June 24th, 2021, and that will be at 11:40 a.m. Pacific time. So that means it'll be 2:40 p.m. Eastern. Adjust your clocks depending on where you are living. But 3 degrees for me is like a Gemini degree. It's about contracts, chattiness, information, what we write, what we put out there, what we have to say. It can be a really positive time for like, especially like a lot of like business stuff, you know, Capricorn in general, business stuff. But with all of the aspects going on with this full moon, I feel like there's an opportunity for us to see blind spots and to be really innovative and to be able to better work with other people. Probably my favorite aspect, I'll start with the sweet before I get to the salty, is the fact that the Sun will trine Jupiter. So we've got Jupiter in Pisces, the Sun is in Cancer. This is a lot of water energy, and water, kind of like, you know, if you've ever had a flood or if you've ever had like a leak or something in your house, right? It's not always something that happens overnight. It kind of seeps in, and it's not until it's been leaking under a sink for a while, or maybe you've had like a broken washer or a water heater or whatever. Oftentimes it isn't until, you know, all of the water is all over the floor and it's visible that we're like, oh my gosh, there's been something going on here for a while. And then you got to get in there and you got to fix it. Water energy in a chart works the same way. It's meant to be healing, cleansing, therapeutic, emotional, but there is a slow drip, 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 drip until you really start to feel it. So Sun trine Jupiter is positive, lucky, optimistic. It's highlighting these coincidences and all of these things that can kind of pop up where Jupiter is saying, you know, here's some sprinkles of some good luck, you know, emotionally. I think it's going to keep people in really good spirits. I think that that's going to be the positive thing about this full moon. And whenever I see a Sun-Jupiter aspect, I also kind of feel like there is an opportunity for enlightenment, personal enlightenment, or just, you know, positive kind of happy feelings. The moon will also sextile Jupiter, so that's really helpful because I feel like that's funneling the energy from the work that we do and how we kind of come into some kind of expansion. So there is some emotional labor pains involved. It's not like something's just going to fall out of the sky. We do need to do the emotional work in order to receive all of the cosmic goodies. Mercury will trine Saturn and sextile Chiron. So Mercury will be direct at the time of the full moon. Yay! With his trine to Saturn, it means that there are some stable, supportive conversations, information going on. It can be a much easier time to book travel. It can be a much easier time to come to an arrangement or a deal or just an agreement, especially pertaining to cars, documents, vehicles, short distance trips, things like that. If you absolutely positively have to buy a car, or if you have to sign a contract or a lease, or anything like that, just on the heels of this might be a good time to do it. You're going to want to wait until the moon actually leaves Capricorn, and I'll talk to you about that in just a second. And then with the sextile to Chiron, you know, that's about the healing. Chiron and Aries is our personal commitment to healing and self-awareness and willing to do the work for ourselves. And then next we've got Saturn sextile Chiron. So it's, you know, supporting that. And it's really kind of teaching us that the more that we're working on ourselves, the more that we can help other people. And there is the need to, on an individual level, kind of work on our own issues so we can be of better service to other people. Saturn will also trine the nodes at this time. So Saturn is making a trine to the North Node. We're about to lose it because the North Node is now hovering at around 10 degrees. So this is going to be one of the last kind of Saturn trines that we're going to get to the North Node. So it's building into our destiny. Saturn in Aquarius is how we work as a collective, how we work together to go into our destiny. It's a lot of communication and really encouraging people to just, when in doubt, discuss, talk about things, debate. You know, we've lost that. We've lost the ability to debate things. Like, you know, kind of where we're at in our culture right now is just a lot of people getting offended, a lot of people getting really defensive, a lot of people really stubbornly clinging on to their beliefs. And we have had several years of just nothing but conflict. And so now what I think what it's encouraging us to do is to see the other side of matters, even if we don't agree, to be able to sit at the table and have a conversation and be able to just see other people's perspectives without taking offense to it, right? We've got Mars sextile the nodes. So this is kind of fun because Mars in Leo is very active. So with Mars in Leo sextile the North Node, people are getting riled up. They're getting kind of creative. They want to have fun. They want to do things. And the North Node in Gemini is about communication. It's movement. It's travel. So even though Jupiter's going retrograde, I kind of feel like the next couple of months are going to be very travel heavy. I feel like a lot of people are going to want to go and create. They're going to want to go to concerts. They're going to want to go to theaters, right? They're going to want to go to parties. And so we see that when Mars and Venus are moving into Leo, you know, the individual wants to go out on dates and have a good time. But Saturn is still looming. So I think that we're going to kind of see with the opposition to Saturn and the square to Uranus is that it's kind of like a stop and go thing all summer. You know, some cities are going to still be more restricted in terms of how they're handling coming out of the pandemic. Other places are going to be wide open for business. It's funny, I was just talking about it yesterday. It's like, you know, they're encouraging people to get the vaccine. There are some businesses that are telling you still have to wear masks. There are some businesses saying if you come in and you're not wearing a mask and you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask. Like this is very like all of the planets in opposition to Saturn and square Uranus. It's going to be very confusing because some people are still going to want to stay in their lane and they're going to want to be really cautious and careful and not leave. Other people are just going to want to run around town without wearing masks and without being vaccinated. And then I'm waiting to see what Saturn or what at least the US government starts saying or starts kind of setting up in terms of how we handle this division. And the division is between the old and the new. The old way of doing things, the new way of where we're going, and how we can actually start to apply new social regulations just to be safer going into the future. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I never really thought about a lot of this stuff until we had the pandemic. Like, I never went to the grocery store and was like, oh, I probably should be constantly Pureeing my hands or like washing my hands every single time I go in and out of, a restaurant, or washing my hands every time I go to the gas station. Although I am kind of like that. I am weird about the gas station, but besides that, I wasn't always wearing gloves and masks, and I never really thought about, what the possible implications may be of just being in crowded areas and getting sick. Like, these aren't things that we thought about. So now that we've had all of these harsh aspects that have happened over the last year and a half, we're more socially aware of where we do have places that are overpopulated, where cities are actually tapped and they don't have the resources that they need in the off chance that we do have a pandemic or we do have an emergency. So there has been some goodness to this, where it's actually making us aware and getting us prepared. And also just socially, the fact that, if I had lived in LA for 15 years, and part of the reason why I moved in this last year was because I just couldn't continue a life where I was waking up and going and walking down the street in Silver Lake and going and buying an $8 coffee and also paying extreme crazy rates, you know, to be living where I was living and go shopping at Whole Foods. But you walk out on the street and then you see homeless people everywhere. And this isn't me saying I have an issue with it. I had a moral issue with the fact that I was living a lifestyle where I was thriving and I was around people who weren't, even in giving time and services and donating and all of that. Like, I just didn't feel right doing it. So something shifted where I started looking at things going like, okay, I need to do more. And me doing more is actually me leaving this environment because I don't want to support a state, or I don't want to pay taxes, or I don't want to be living a lifestyle where I'm just allowing this to happen in front of me and acting like it doesn't affect me. So what I'm getting at is the pandemic showed us, it taught us that it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what you drive, where you live. If you are piss poor morally, you're still going to get sick, right? Because the virus is fear itself, in my opinion. I'm not saying it's not real, but I think the virus is fear. So we don't benefit as a collective if those who are considered underclass or those who are living on the streets are sick. It doesn't benefit us, because if we're not actually taking care of those who have less than we do, ultimately it's going to get everybody sick. It's going to affect everybody spiritually, emotionally, physically, right? So it's showing us that, yeah, we are all in this together. And if we're not taking care of our neighbors, North Node and Gemini, if we're not calling and checking on people, if we're not offering help, if we're not placing that phone call, then we're not really helping ourselves. That eventually it's all going to come home to roost, and we're going to be in an even bigger situation than if we had just, you know, helped people to begin with. So I look at what's going on around the world. I'm looking at some countries that are investing in building tiny homes and creating jobs and resources for either their veterans or for the homeless or for those who are, you know, who are just dealing with less, you know, giving them opportunities to be able to go and have new job skills and educating them. Like, that's the stuff we should be doing. If we start doing this stuff and we start kind of banding together and realizing that the more that we're focusing on helping and assisting the micro, whether that's the people who are in our day-to-day life, our neighbors, our siblings, our close friends, if we're doing that and also working on a personal level, collectively, the macro is going to be so much better. We're actually going to start paving the way to kind of live in much more of like an Aquarian lifestyle, which is not the Leo, me, I need, this is mine, I got to have this. That's Taurus too. But we're moving more into the Aquarius, okay, let's everybody kind of be equal. And yeah, I don't know, just the state of the world and the way things have been has been like really triggering for me. And I feel like the events that are going to play out over the next 2 or 3 months are really going to highlight those who are just flat out ignorant and selfish and aren't capable of being able to do more for the greater good. So I'm hoping that, you know, just the people who are watching this stuff, like not even necessarily me. There's a ton of astrologers on YouTube. There's a ton of motivational speakers, and there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of humanitarian work. And if you are one of these people who are watching this stuff, I'm going to assume you're a part of the change in the world. And yeah, keep doing the good work. All right. So then finally, kind of the later things that we see are the loose trine from the moon in Capricorn to Uranus and Taurus. And we're really, really going to feel the Venus-Pluto opposition pretty strong during this full moon. I don't believe we're really going to feel it until the moon moves into Capricorn and it conjuncts Pluto on the 25th. So as soon as that moon moves in further into Capricorn, conjuncts Pluto and opposes Venus, look for that big pow event that's going to play out right on the heels of the full moon in Capricorn. And that's going to highlight that power struggle, that issue revolving around finances, the give and the take and things like that that are going on. That's most everything. I guess the only other thing I would say is just that Capricorn is cardinal, so it wants to initiate things. So it's definitely a lot more active than other transits. And so now that we've got the sun in Cancer and we've got all of these planets that are kind of setting up with the moon and Pluto and also Venus and other cardinal signs, we will see movement. We will see things actually pop. Capricorn is a reflection of maturity, structure, professional goals, our role in society, working with elders or government figures or a parent, right? So there will be themes that will come up like this as a result of this full moon. If you are a Cap, Sun, Moon, or Rising, especially if you're anywhere between, like, let's say 3 and 5, well, 0 and 5 degrees of Capricorn, you're really going to feel this pretty strongly. If it's happening on your ascendant, it's going to deal with your image. It's going to deal with your body, how you feel, how you take action in the world. If it's happening on your moon, it can definitely be some huge emotional shifts, and it can really affect what's going on with you domestically or with a family member. And if it's happening on your sun, it can just be like this big, like cycle of like completion, like some personal goal can come to fruition. So be mindful of that. Let's talk about how it's going to affect each and every one of the 12 signs, okay? So the way that this works is you really want to listen for your rising sign and also your sun sign. Your moon will apply, but it'll be more on an emotional level. Thank you guys for listening to my rant. I don't even watch the news anymore, man. It's like I can't watch the news. When I watch the news, it's just, first of all, it just feels like super, super, super filtered and very scripted, but I just get triggered watching the news because it's hard for me to watch what's going on in the world. So do my part. I watch independent news and read a lot. All right, so we're gonna start with Aries first. So Aries, this is gonna be highlighting for you your 10th house and your 4th house axis. So technically the full moon will be in your 10th house. So you'll see things like major changes going on at work, wrapping up a big project, starting or quitting a job. It can also be some huge thing going on with a boss or with a superior. There can be something like that happening for you, especially with Pluto being in and around that house. It's there's a lot of change going on in your career right now. And you want to look at the dynamic between, the moon in your 10th and the sun in your 4th. You're definitely going to be one of the ones that's going to be dealing with some of like the domestic stuff, right? Like there's a lot of domestic stuff going on for you and how that's impacting you at work. Ace of Pentacles, looks like it's money. And that can happen, right? When you have a full moon that's happening in your 10th house, it can be a raise, it can be a promotion. It's something solid. It's something that you've been waiting for. I also feel like this can be an indication that this is a wrapping up of like an annual like cycle. So it's like been about a year that you've been working on this, or maybe you're starting a project that's going to take about a year, but whatever it is, it's about money, new resources coming. And what also can be interesting is it can be about like through those resources that come through work, how it funnels and it goes back into your home, right? Whether it's remodeling something or you decide that, you just want to do something nice for your family, or maybe looking at being able to buy another home. It can be, giving to your family or your family needing resources and you're like, I got you. So this is really nice for you, Aries. All right, so for Taurus, this is highlighting your 9th house and your 3rd house. This is a fellow earth sign, so it should do very well for you, this full moon. Having a full moon in your 9th house is lucky. It is about your beliefs. It's about travel. It's about education, philosophy, right? And when we see all of this energy highlighting with a full moon in your 9th and the sun in your 3rd, to me it looks like you're making travel plans and you're having to talk a lot about travel plans. It can also be something that has to do with like your day-to-day life and how you're, just changing your beliefs and like what's expanding for you in terms of your belief system. It can also be, putting a real emphasis on, where it is that you're going, like literally later this year. It's going to be one of these two things. So for you to be having this full moon that's taking place in your 9th house, I think it's like you're going somewhere at the end of the year and you need to talk a lot about this now. There can even be something going on where you're thinking a lot about, taking a course or completing a course of study. That's another way that I could see this. the Fool, it's about travel. So it's going to be about where you're going, and it's about taking a chance, taking a leap, and being willing to do something that you wouldn't usually do, or going somewhere that you wouldn't usually go, and it's just kind of like going with the flow. This is also a brand new beginning for you. This is a 0. So I see this as like you being able to have a clean slate, and there's some shift that happens with your philosophy through travel or through education. Right? And I also feel it's like going into something blindly, being like, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to educate myself on it. For Gemini, this is highlighting your 8th house. This can be a little bit more of an uncomfortable full moon for you, Gemini, especially the Gemini risings. You know, the 8th house is kind of like all of the things that go bump in the night. It's cleaning out the closet, things that you don't want to deal with psychologically. It can definitely bring up some uncomfortable conversations pertaining to joint resources, sex, death, intimacy, taxes. For there to be like a full moon there, especially happening in Capricorn, it makes me feel like there's some conclusion that's happening. You can get a bonus. There can be a change in your partner's resources. You can find out that you're getting a chunk of change. There can also equally be like the need to pay off debt or pay off a loan. The Hanged Man. So this tells me that like you're avoiding something, like there's something that you're avoiding that you don't want to deal with, or there's something that you're ignoring. This is also talking about like your dreams and your intuition, or there being some kind of haziness. Be careful around the full moon. You know, Pluto is there also, so there can be some like real transactional things that are happening, and like you can be kind of like hesitant about like that merger financially, or like buying something, or whether something's going to get paid off, whether somebody's going to pay you. It's saying like don't delay, like you can reflect and meditate on it, but don't avoid something. Like if you know you have a looming bill, if you know that you have like your taxes that you still haven't filed, maybe you haven't filed for a while, or you know you need to get an accountant, or you need to pay something off, take action. Like don't just stick your head in the sand, okay? All right, for Cancer and Cancer rising, this is highlighting your 7th house of relationships. And you're gonna see just like a real dynamic situation play out, especially for Cancer risings. You know, Venus in your 1st house and Venus in your sign in opposition to Pluto is gonna show you where you need to love yourself more, okay? And you have to keep reminding yourself of this. You have to love yourself more, because for Cancer risings, the next month ahead is going to really highlight and show you where you stand with another person, with all of the oppositions that are going to start setting up between your 1st and your 7th house. So, you know, a full moon in your 7th house is kind of like a make or break situation for relationships. You really kind of take a look at whether or not you're going to move on to the next step in a current relationship, whether or not it's time to say goodbye, if it's time to shut the door. And with Venus on your ascendant, I feel very confident that you're safe and you're secure, but it's about paying better attention to your own needs and, you know, not allowing a relationship to kind of give you emotional whiplash. Equally also, it can be a time for those of you Cancerians who have been hesitant to get into relationships, can have a lot of healing from past issues in relationships, and you can finally close the door and be ready to move forward. And it can also be a time where you meet people. So Venus on your ascendant is wonderful. Take care of yourself, focus on nurturing yourself, you know, doing a little bit more for your personal upkeep. Venus in your 1st can be great for just your appearance and making changes to your clothes or your beauty routine. And you might really strike somebody as like very, very, very attractive, and somebody can get very fixated on you with Pluto in opposition. 5 of Swords tells me to avoid conflict at all costs. And it might be harder to do because swords can be not like wands that are combative, but swords are just like a lot of like mental conflict. It can be a lot of like you going back and arguing with somebody. There can be somebody who can get really petty with you and like want to be kind of like controlling. I could see that with Pluto. It could also be a situation where just like somebody is using some like really harsh words, or somebody is just a little bit not like themselves, like kind of like grumpy or argumentative. And it's learning to just deflect and be like, no, because, you know, in the 5 of Swords, you see them actually laying the swords down and walking away, where it's like, I'm not going to have this back and forth with you. Like, don't fight fire with fire, Cancer, because doing that during a full moon is definitely not going to make you feel good. Avoiding conflict if you can, especially in the midst of a possible heated situation. All right, so for Leo, this is highlighting your 6th house, which is work, service, your day-to-day routines. This is your health, this is your pets, your coworkers. And in Capricorn, I feel like it's just, you have a really extensive to-do list, right? Like there's this huge focus on your to-do list. You have a lot to do. And it's also about what's going on with the people that you work around and whether or not there's some kind of conflict that's brewing, whether or not you're reaching some of your health goals. I've seen a lot of Leos get real serious about their health and their fitness as a result of the transits over the last couple of years. And so some of you guys can be seeing some really positive changes that are happening on your mental health as a result of shifts that have been happening with your physical health. So let's see. 5 of Swords again. Okay, let's see what another card says. 5 of Swords, 9 of Wands. So I see that as some kind of conflict possibly in the workspace or some kind of like conflicting energy that's going on with people that you've been working with, or even your schedule flushing out. I also feel like for you with like Pluto being there, it's like not allowing anything that's going on at work to like mentally throw you off, right? Because you can be like really drained and you can be like kind of crabby with the sun in your 12th house, and you having to get to the other side of like how you get out of workspace drama. You can listen to your progressed moon, but I would say I would listen more to your rising sign or your sun sign. Good question. Thank you, J-Lo. I appreciate it. All right, so next is going to be Virgo. So this is highlighting your 5th house. It's another earth sister sign. So this will be a lovely energy for you, super earthy and grounding. And when you have a full moon in your 5th house, it's romantic. It's a time where there is a conclusion that's going on, or like the heart is coming to some awareness. The heart can feel very full, very romantic, very fun, very playful, great for personal creative projects. Those of you guys who are self-employed, it can be a time where you're feeling like you're falling in love, you're meeting somebody, you're just starting to get into the beginning process of getting to know somebody. Those of you guys who are trying to get pregnant, it's a very fertile time. You know, Virgo and Virgo rising, you've had a lot of Capricorn energy going on in your chart the last couple of years. So this full moon, I think, is really kind of like highlighting where you have matured a lot, especially when it comes to like your dating life or your relationship with children, or how you just feel about the idea of having children. Justice. So definitely I see this like, this is a karmic card also. And it is talking about your 2nd house. So it's talking about your values in relationships, what you need, whether or not you feel secure or safe in a relationship, the dynamic that you have with another person. You know, a relationship might be defined or getting ready to be defined at this time. You might be really focusing on like finding that balance in relationships and finding people who are more complementary to you than what you've been with in recent years. It can also be about you dealing with a Libra, so they can have some really significant Libra signatures, whether it's a sun, moon, rising, or 2nd or 7th house stellium, and like finding your center again when it comes to romance. All right, so next we have Libra. So this is highlighting your 4th house and your 10th house. So for Libra, you know, a full moon in your 4th house is like big things going on domestically or emotionally. A lot of action going on in the home or with one of your parents. It can also be highlighting just how you're feeling on a personal level. This is a much more private full moon for you. So there can be things that pertain to like home, family, your private life. You know, the 4th house is the end of matters. So with Pluto there, if you are a Libra or a Libra rising, be mindful that this can be a time where you're selling a home, saying goodbye to somebody from the family. There can be transitions and passings, unfortunately, that can happen for Libras, especially when I look at like your ruler coming into opposition with Pluto and Uranus being in your 8th house. So be mindful, Libras. Some of you guys might have to go home for like a family crisis or be there for a parent. 9 of Pentacles tells me that you're strong. I also feel like this is about stability and like really coming to a point where you're feeling like really secure with yourself and having everything that you need. This can also be like an emotional breakthrough, which leads to you feeling like you have more abundance or you have more of an abundant life. It can also just be about like spoiling yourself, you know, nurturing and pampering yourself. So if you are feeling a little bit more emotional, it's kind of like a great time to like do the mani-pedi, get the pedicure and the facial and the massage and the bath, like whatever it is that you need to like really make yourself feel grounded and secure, do that. But this is a wonderful card also for just like feeling really good with yourself. Somebody said, Loriana said, Virgo sun, just opened a small business 3 months ago and gaining momentum. It's exciting for a full moon then for you, if you're a Virgo sun. Next we have Scorpio. So this is highlighting the axis of your 3rd and your 9th house. So Scorpio, a full moon happening in your 3rd house is all about how you communicate and what you have to say and how you share that information with other people. For Pluto to be in this part of your chart and a full moon, it's really going to have you in your thoughts, and it's really going to have you reevaluating a contract, making commitments possibly pertaining to travel or a vehicle. You might be thinking about like launching a business or teaching something or taking a course. I could also see you being in a situation where if there is something that's going on with a sibling, you're having to make a lot of phone calls, there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of planning that can be happening here. With the opposition to your 9th house sun, it's like maybe you're talking back and forth a lot with like family or siblings about future travel ideas. Can also be a time where you're really just focused on your studies. The Devil. So this is the card of Capricorn. This is the card of Saturn also. So it's also saying, for whatever reason, Scorpios need to be a lot more aware of what is happening with Saturn in their chart. Granted, this is a Saturn-ruled moon. So Saturn's actually right now in your 4th house, and it's coming into a square with your 7th house. So that tells me there's some intense communication that's going to go on that you have to have with your family and your partner. Something is going on domestically where you're going to feel bound, where it's like you don't know which one to choose. You feel like you're being pulled between both. So your partner might want one thing, your family might want another, and you're going to feel stuck. And it's about releasing and letting go of negative thought patterns, or where you're too rigid or you feel too fixated on a certain idea. I also get this feeling that it's about like, you know, you being too stuck in a cycle or in a pattern of negative, like it's just negative thoughts that you need to clear out. So really focus on that for the full moon, Scorpio. Sag and Sag rising. This is your 2nd house. It highlights the aspects between your 2nd and your 8th house. So the 2nd house, a full moon here, can be very nice for resources, very nice for money, can definitely bring in a chunk of change, especially with Venus going into your 8th house. It can be a very sensual time. It can be a very abundant time. It can be a time where you're really coming into a real sense of awareness and like your self-worth and your self-esteem is doing very well. Can also be a time where you have to pay something off or somebody has to pay you. 6 of Pentacles. So it is a give and take. It might be that, you know, you have a bill that you need to pay and you're waiting on something to come through and it comes through just in time. This is also about that exchange that you have with other people and how you can be of service and other people can be of service to you. Look for help when you need it. If you are in a situation where you're in a pinch financially and you just need something to get by, somebody could help you. Equally, if you find yourself in a situation where you can help somebody else, please do so, because it's saying that it will come back to you. All right, so we've got Capricorn. This is highlighting your 1st and your 7th house. A full moon in your 1st house generally feels pretty good. Makes you kind of emotional, so just be mindful of that. And it tells me that there is some kind of completion going on for yourself, for your body, for how you look, for how you feel, for how you move about in the world. There can be a brand new haircut, a change of style, and a total segue, especially pertaining to just how you feel about yourself. You know, Saturn's in your 2nd house right now, so many of you guys are really working hard on your self-esteem. Many Capricorns are focusing on, you know, trying to build wealth, and they're realizing it stems from investing in themselves. So there can definitely be a sense of like changing how you're eating, changing how you're dressing, changing how you treat yourself. And it's really going to radiate outwards. Like people are really going to see this during the time of the full moon. It will highlight the dynamic between yourself and relationships. And so with Venus going through your 7th house, it's a wonderful time for partnering. It's a wonderful time for relating. It's bringing all of this energy into your 7th where people are going to want to spend time with you, interact with you, nurture relationships with you, be around you. They might be pursuing you more. And Pluto is still in your 1st house, Capricorn. So there are still things where you need to learn how to change. And, you know, sometimes the 3rd dimension is the last thing to shift. So if you are going through a huge personal physical transformation, it's now becoming apparent and you have to really apply your mental or your emotional shifts as well. So if you're carrying yourself differently, looking differently, feeling differently, and people are approaching you and they're like, you are so beautiful, or I want to spend more time with you, or I would want to partner with you. Some Capricorns are like, me? What do you mean? Like, no. And you haven't realized who you've like come to like become, like who you've come into, if that makes sense. So there can be like this sense of like having a, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like you're having a bit of an identity crisis. Like you haven't like really kind of realized that you're coming out of your cocoon period. You're coming into your butterfly period. So it's really important to like listen and hear other people when they compliment you, or notice where other people are trying to like nurture relationships with you. The Emperor. Awesome time for just how you're carrying yourself personally, your personal energy. You know, the Emperor does also represent what's going on with Mars in your chart, and it also represents Aries. So Aries being your 4th house, these emotional shifts that you're going through. I also feel like the Emperor can be about big personal accomplishments within your career, or just taking the initiative when it comes to your career or launching something for yourself. That's happening for a lot of you guys with Saturn in your 2nd house and Jupiter in your 3rd. So I think it's just about taking the initiative and also just like really kind of coming into your own personal authority. So true, so true. Now we've got Aquarius. So this is highlighting your 12th house and your 6th house. A full moon in your 12th house can definitely bring out all the stops. A full moon here will illuminate something that you are not aware of. To me, it seems like stuff that's going on behind the scenes at work, stuff that's going on behind the scenes for you psychologically, really intense dreams, phobias coming up. Capricorn in your 12th can be ancestral, so there can be like some kind of contact from ancestors who have passed on, or there can be some kind of anxiety that's happening as a result of career changes. Lots of change are happening for Aquarius right now. 10 of Wands. So releasing something. This is release of struggle. This is, you know, coming to a cycle of completion where you let go. I see this is also the need to like rest and recuperate. So there is a sense of, if you're tired from moving, if you're tired from working nonstop, if you're tired because you've been carrying a lot of other people's drama and issues and things like that, like there is a need to rest. When there is a full moon in your 12th and you've got planets that are moving into your 6th, a lot of your health issues can be as a result of you know, you overworking or you not paying attention to your emotions. So it's really important to pay attention to that. You know, you will see that next month we have a new moon that's going to be in Cancer in your 6th house. And I think that's when you start to realize that you can't just railroad your emotions and your feelings. Like you have to be aware of how you're feeling and navigate that, and not, you benefit from building your schedule around that essentially. And last but not least, we have Pisces. So Pisces, this is happening in your 11th house. So it's a full moon that deals with your goals, your hopes, your dreams, your wishes, big accomplishments and celebrations for your friends. It can be working with friends on joint ventures. It can be getting really serious about your goals, meeting really important or pivotal people. When it's making an opposition to your 5th, you become aware of your heart's desires. So I think that you can see both like inspiration stemming from friends who are getting into healthier relationships, or they're launching projects, or they're like working for themselves, or they're just being really creative, and you become aware of those goals that oh, hello, the Empress. You become aware of those goals. So, you know, for some Pisces, like, do you have friends that are having kids? Do you have friends that are getting married? Do you have friends that are making big moves in their career? You know, your heart can be full and really excited for them. And you can also feel a sense of like, wow, I want that too. So with, you know, the sun going through your 5th house, it's fertility, right? It's the opportunities for new creative projects, and creativity can be creating a child. It can also be launching a business. So you'll see in this next month that as a result of evaluating your goals and also seeing what a lot of your friends are doing or a lot of your social groups are doing, you become more emotionally involved in what it is that you want to create. This is a pregnancy card though, so be mindful, Pisces, something is brewing. If not, this can also be talking about a relationship that you have with a woman. It can be talking about, you know, your role as a mother, your relationship with your mother, how you're interacting with your mother, and just really powerful, strong feminine energy that's kind of setting up for you. It can be a really great card for you to meditate with, and it will remind you that you have to take care of you, okay? That was a pretty decent stream today. We got a lot out. I was kind of concerned that we wouldn't be able to get to all of it, but we did. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I'm going to be back next Monday to do another stream for the weekly. I haven't really looked to see what's going on. I know I'm going to talk a lot about the Saturn, Uranus, and Mars and Venus squares, because I want to prepare everybody and get everybody ready, because I know there's going to be a lot of these ego blows, and there's going to be a lot of just standoffs that are going on in relationships of all kinds. So before we get to that point, I just want to remind you guys, watch the egos this week. There are going to be all kinds of ego flares that are going to be building. It'll get stronger right before I do my next live, like this oncoming weekend. So where there's resistance and where there's pushback, there can be lots of Uranian explosive situations where suddenly friends have falling out, relationships end, things like that. But equally, some of this pressure is to help us initiate and create change and learn to be able to be more of a team player. So where you're seeing a lot of this energy happening in your life, I would just say, take a breather, take a step back, don't add any fuel to the fire. We're going to talk a lot about the Saturn-Uranus squares and the Venus and Leo aspects, and where we want to use that as fuel to just kind of organize our lives and our relationships with other people and our personal desires, because our desires are becoming very strong and our needs are shifting. So we'll talk a lot about that next week. I'm also here every Friday. Friday nights I come on and I talk and I do live readings. So sometimes it's tarot, sometimes it's astrology. If you have a question about astrology or a question about tarot, you can catch me live on Friday nights. Just go ahead and subscribe to my channel below. You can also see all my social media and my links. Please do like this video. It helps kind of get it into the algorithm for YouTube, and it gets it a little bit more viewers. Also, those of you guys who watch my podcast that I do, the Midheaven Podcast with Mike the Peace Dealer, just put out our brand new episode on Cancer season and talk about that. And we also have the summer special, so we talk about all of the astrology really up until September. So if you want to get all those dates, you want that information, do check that out. If you'd like to get a reading with me, check out my website below at beyondtheveiltarot.com. Got some openings starting in August. So if you would like to get a reading with me, go ahead and check out the link, and you can actually see my schedule and book with me whenever you'd like. Thank you guys so much. It was nice to see you, and I appreciate your love and all the comments, and it's so cool to see all of you guys join me on a Monday morning. I appreciate it so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see all of you very soon.